A haunting image of trembling fingers releasing fine black powder into bubbling egusi soup, the dish that once meant love and sustenance now transformed into a carrier of malice and ruin. We are introduced to Mama Amara, a woman whose entire existence revolves around her son, Chinedu. When Chinedu welcomes his educated and gracious wife, Anita, into their home, Mama Amara interprets Anita's warmth as an act of robbery, each kind gesture stealing away her son's devotion. The air grows thick with unspoken hostility as Mama Amara observes Anita moving through the compound, her broom sweeping the red earth, her laughter ringing out like an alarm bell in the older woman's ears. Chinedu had never slept a night away from his mother until he turned 23. Even as a man, his first question each morning was not what the day held, but whether Mama Amara had slept well. He consulted her on everything, which shirt to wear, which farm plot to tend, which prayers to say. She had raised him alone after his father's death, pouring every ounce of her strength into him, and he had grown into a reflection of her devotion. But devotion, when left unchecked, becomes possession. Mama Amara wore her widowhood like armor. She kept Chinedu close, not just out of love, but out of fear that the world would steal him, that another woman would erase her sacrifice. She cooked his meals with ritualistic precision, washed his clothes by hand long after they could afford otherwise, and watched him with the intensity of someone guarding the last flame in a dying fire. When the village women hinted that it was time for Chinedu to marry, Mama Amara smiled tightly and said, "When the time is right." But in her heart, she believed no time would ever be right. No woman could love him the way she did. No woman had earned him. Then came Anita. Anita arrived on a Sunday, dressed in a modest blue wrapper and white blouse, her head held high but her eyes soft with respect. She greeted Mama Amara with a deep bow, calling her Ma in a voice that was clear and confident. Chinedu stood beside her, beaming with a pride Mama Amara had never seen before. She finished secondary school, Mama, Chinedu said, as if this were a gift he was presenting. She can read and write. She even knows some English. Mama Amara's smile did not reach her eyes. Education. Pride. Shokara. These were the words that echoed in her mind as she watched Anita unpack her small belongings. The younger woman moved through the compound with an ease that felt like ownership, offering to help with chores, speaking to Chinedu in low, private tones that Mama Amara could not hear. At night, Mama Amara lay awake, listening to the soft murmur of their voices through the thin walls. They laughed together. They whispered. And with each shared word, Mama Amara felt herself becoming invisible. Anita was not rude. She was not disrespectful. But her very presence was an affront, a quiet declaration that Mama Amara's reign had ended. And that, more than anything, was unforgivable. It started with small things. Chinedu began asking Anita's opinion before his mother's. When a neighbor offered him work in the next village, he turned to his wife first. "What do you think, Anita? Should I go?" Mama Amara stood at the doorway, wooden spoon in hand, waiting for him to ask her. He never did. When the rains came late and the yam harvest looked uncertain, Chinedu sat with Anita under the mango tree, discussing what to plant next season. Mama Amara, who had farmed this land for 30 years, was not invited to the conversation. "She's filling his head with her school talk," Mama Amara muttered to herself, stirring the evening soup with more force than necessary. Making him think he needs her advice. But it wasn't just advice. It was intimacy. It was the way Chinedu looked at Anita when she spoke, like she held answers Mama Amara never could. It was the way he touched her hand when he thought no one was watching. It was the way he had become someone else's son. One evening, Mama Amara tried to reclaim her place. "Chinedu, come. Sit with me. Let us talk about your father's land." He glanced at Anita, then back at his mother. "Later, Mama. Anita and I are discussing something." Later never came. That night, Mama Amara made a decision. If she could not win back her son's heart, she would break the hold Anita had over it. The journey to the neighboring village took half a day. Mama Amara told no one where she was going. She wrapped her head tightly against the sun and walked the dusty path with the determination of someone who had already crossed a line and could not turn back. The Dibia's compound was hidden behind a grove of iroko trees, marked only by the smell of burning herbs and the low hum of incantations. He was an old man with eyes that seemed to see through flesh and bone, and when Mama Amara explained what she wanted, he did not flinch. "You want her barren," he said. It was not a question. Mama Amara nodded. "She has stolen my son. If she cannot give him children, he will see her for what she is, useless." The Dibia studied her for a long moment, then reached beneath his stool and pulled out a small leather pouch. Inside was a powder so fine it looked like ash, so dark it seemed to swallow light. "Sprinkle this into her food," he said. "But listen carefully. This medicine does not forgive mistakes. It must touch only her lips. No one else." Mama Amara took the pouch, her hands trembling with something between fear and exhilaration. She paid him with the money she had been saving for Chinedu's future, and walked home with the weight of her choice pressing against her chest. She told herself it was love. She told herself it was protection. But deep down, she knew it was something darker. The evening Mama Amara chose was ordinary, too ordinary. Anita had gone to the stream to fetch water, and Chinedu was still at the farm. The compound was quiet, save for the crackling of firewood and the bubbling of 2 pots on the stove. Mama Amara's hands shook as she untied the leather pouch. The powder inside seemed to pulse with a life of its own, and for a moment, she hesitated. But then she thought of Chinedu's laughter with Anita, of the way he no longer needed her, and the hesitation vanished. She sprinkled the powder into one pot, the one she would serve to Anita. The other pot, clean and pure, would be for Chinedu. Mama Amara stirred the tainted soup slowly, watching the black specks dissolve into the rich orange of the egusi. It looked perfect. It smelled perfect. It was poison dressed as love. She set the pot aside and waited, her heart pounding so loudly she thought it might betray her. Anita would return soon. She would eat. And then, slowly, inevitably, her body would betray her. No children. No purpose. No hold over Chinedu. Mama Amara sat by the fire, rehearsing her innocence. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Chinedu came home early, his face streaked with sweat and dirt, his body heavy with exhaustion. He dropped his machete by the door and called out, "Mama. I'm starving. Is food ready?" Mama Amara's blood turned cold. "Wait," she said, rushing toward him. "Wait, my son. Let me dish your food properly." But Chinedu was already at the stove, lifting the lid of the nearest pot. "The poison one." "No." Mama Amara's voice cracked, too loud, too desperate. She grabbed his arm, but he shook her off, laughing. "Mama, what's wrong with you?" "I'm just hungry." He scooped the soup into a bowl, tearing off a piece of fufu from the basket. Mama Amara stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. She wanted to scream, to knock the bowl from his hands, to confess everything, but the words lodged in her throat like stones. Chinedu ate with the enthusiasm of a man who had worked all day and trusted his mother completely. He finished the bowl, then a second, then wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "This is the best soup you've made in weeks, Mama," he said, grinning. Mama Amara did not answer. She could not. She watched her son lick his fingers clean, and in that moment, she understood what she had done. She had not poisoned her enemy. She had devoured her own child. The change in Chinedu was slow, almost imperceptible at first. He grew tired more easily, his laughter less frequent. His skin, once vibrant and glowing, took on a dull, ashen quality. Anita noticed. She cooked him strengthening soups, took him to herbalists, prayed over him in the quiet hours of the night. But nothing helped. The village women, ever watchful, began to whisper. 3 years of marriage and still no child, they murmured at the market. It must be the wife. She's probably barren. Maybe she ate something forbidden. Anita bore the shame with grace, her head held high even as the gossip followed her like a shadow. She never spoke back, never defended herself. She simply loved Chinedu more fiercely, as if her devotion could somehow undo whatever curse had settled over their home. Mama Amara, meanwhile, withered in silence. She watched her son fade, watched Anita's quiet strength, and felt the weight of her sin crushing her chest. She could not eat. She could not sleep. Guilt became her constant companion, a second skin she could not shed. Sometimes, late at night, she thought about confessing. But what would she say? That she had tried to destroy his wife and destroyed him instead. That her love had been the poison all along. So she said nothing. And the years stretched on, heavy and hollow. If you felt the weight of this silence, the way secrets can suffocate a home, then you know why this story must be told. Stay with us. There's more to uncover. It was Anita who finally insisted they visit the hospital in the city. We need to know the truth, she told Chinedu gently. Not for the village. For us. The test took 3 days. Blood work. Examinations. Questions that felt invasive and humiliating. When the doctor finally called them into his office, Mama Amara insisted on coming along, her presence a silent, guilty vigil. The doctor was clinical, his words precise. Mr. Chinedu, the issue is not with your wife. Your sperm count is severely low, almost non-existent. The damage appears to be irreversible, possibly caused by exposure to a toxic substance years ago. The room went silent. Anita's hand flew to her mouth. Chinedu stared at the doctor as if the words were in a language he didn't understand. And Mama Amara felt the ground open beneath her. It's me. Chinedu whispered. Not Anita. The doctor nodded. Your wife is perfectly healthy. The inability to conceive is entirely on your side. Anita wept, not from sadness, but from relief. 3 years of whispered accusations, of silent shame, and it had never been her fault. She reached for Chinedu's hand, and he held it, his eyes glassy with shock. Mama Amara said nothing. She walked out of the office, down the hospital corridor, and into the harsh afternoon sun, where no light could reach the darkness inside her. Mama Amara saw the dibia at the market 6 months later. He was older, more frail, hawking charms and roots at a corner store. She approached him slowly, her voice barely audible over the noise of the crowd. The medicine you gave me, she said. It didn't work. The dibia looked at her, recognition flickering in his cloudy eyes. What do you mean? My son ate it instead. And now he cannot have children. The old man's face remained impassive. Of course. The medicine was designed for men. It destroys their seed, makes them sterile. But for women? He shrugged. It does nothing. Harmless as water. Mama Amara's legs buckled. She gripped the edge of the store to keep from falling. You didn't tell me. You didn't ask, the dibia replied coldly. You said you wanted her barren. I gave you what you paid for. How you used it, that was your choice. The market spun around her. The noise, the heat, the weight of the truth, it all pressed down on her like a physical force. If Anita had eaten the soup, nothing would have happened. The poison was never meant for women. It was calibrated for men. She had spent years fearing she had cursed her daughter-in-law, when in reality, she had destroyed her son with a weapon that could only ever harm him. The irony was perfect. The tragedy, complete. Perhaps there are truths too heavy to carry alone. Perhaps that's why confession exists, not for forgiveness, but for the unbearable need to be seen in our brokenness. If this story has moved you, share it. Let it remind us all what jealousy cost. The confession came on a Sunday, in front of the entire family. Chinedu and Anita had announced their decision to adopt a baby girl they named Maya, a decision that brought joy back into the house for the first time in years. But Mama Amara could not let them build their future on a lie. I need to tell you something, she said, her voice breaking the celebratory mood. And then, with trembling hands and tears streaming down her face, she told them everything. The jealousy. The dibia. The poisoned soup. The terrible mistake. Chinedu listened in silence, his face a mask of stone. Anita wept quietly, her hand pressed to her chest. When Mama Amara finished, the room was so quiet that the baby's soft breathing seemed deafening. "You took everything from me," Chinedu said finally, his voice hollow. "My future. My children. My trust." "I know," Mama Amara whispered. "I know." He stood, cradling baby Maya in his arms, and looked at his mother with eyes that held no warmth. "I forgive you because I must. Because holding hatred will only poison me further. But understand this, Mama, you are no longer the woman I call mother in my heart. You are a stranger who shares my blood." Mama Amara nodded, broken and small. Chinedu and Anita raised Maya with a love that was fierce and protective, a love born from loss and hard-won grace. They built a life together, one where trust was sacred and second chances were earned. And Mama Amara. She lived in the same house, ate at the same table, but existed in a separate world, a ghost haunting the edges of a family she had destroyed with her own hands. The bitter harvest of jealousy is always the same, you reap exactly what you sow, but never in the way you expect. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next video.